Geordie Prepper here, hope you're all well. Today is 12th of Feb 2024. Seems that the two aircraft carriers, they're both sister ships. One's the HMS Prince of Wales and the other one is the HMS Queen Elizabeth. They were two ships commissioned together, but it seems like they're both being hit with technical problems. The Prince of Wales was supposed to leave for exercise Steadfast Defender, which is ongoing at the minute, but there was some sort of breakdown at the last minute. This Navy chief has basically said, I hope it hasn't broken down again, which would seem to indicate that there's some technical, potentially some recurring problem with the ships and the HMS Queen Elizabeth. That was supposed to depart, but then there was an issue with its starboard propeller coupling. They basically replaced the Queen Elizabeth with the Prince of Wales. We can see here that it's supposed to have went off to the NATO exercise, but it didn't, and then it finally did manage to get underway. So it seems like there could be some sort of issue which might come up in the future with these ships, and that doesn't really bode well for any future conflict if this is the latest and greatest ships that can be deployed. So we're coming very close to the invasion of Rafah, and it's 1.5 million people basically just jammed into this small city on the edge of the Egyptian border. And Hamas is basically saying that any attack will just completely rule out any sort of exchange or truce. Netanyahu's told troops to prepare to enter the city. They've already started bombarding it, and there's already people losing their lives. We see reports of so many people dying after an attack. And I think it's just the proximity of people together which is really going to increase the collateral damage of any sort of a attack on the city. I think everybody in the worldwide community basically just sees what a mistake it would be, and if it's not handled properly, if there's not an effort to let the refugees go somewhere. And from Israel's posturing and, the way things are with this conflict in the minute, it would seem like Israel is basically more and more alone. And other groups against Israel are gaining allies. And Israel's more and more seeming isolated, in isolation over this whole affair and the way that it's handled it. And talking about people and allies banding together and strengthening deals, the BRICS is growing in strength. Biggest 5 developing countries in the world are part of it: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. There's more and more countries wanting to join it, are interested in joining it. Russia's taken over the presidency of it. I'm pretty sure that they're going to be quite aggressive with some changes which reduce their reliance on the dollar. The United States deploys a lot of their nukes overseas. They have nukes in Turkey, elsewhere, Europe. They're deploying nuclear weapons to England. Britain's already got a nuclear arsenal of its own, but this is more likely tactical nukes. They're of a type which has a variable yield as well, so they could choose to do a very low yield, or they could ramp it up to the top of the weapons specification. But Russia's basically declared that its stance on weapon deployment is that it's not going to deploy weapons to other countries. Now, the exception to that, of course, is Belarus. They did put nukes into that country. It's both a sign of trust and also the one that's putting the nuclear weapons in the country is almost on an intimidating foot, to be honest. And it looks like Russia's only put them in Belarus at the minute. Whether that changes or not in the future, who knows? I mean, with the BRICS alliance, we don't know what type of nuclear cooperation is built into that. So the BRICS coalition is going from strength to strength, and they're reducing their reliance on the dollar. They created their own financial backbone, ways to exchange currency between each other in their own native currencies instead of the US dollar. Putin himself said that all their transactions are only about 18% now in US dollars. Some sites are saying it's around 15%, but the point is that the reliance on the dollar's going down. You're transacting more in yuan and other currencies, and they're essentially becoming more and more appealing to other countries, and they're joining up and signing up. You know, they've just had enough of the bullying and everything in the other institutions, so at least that's what it appears. Like, if more people are joining a boat that's starting to rise and float, you're going to leave the one that's sinking. And, at the minute, the dollars is in a boat that's just going right under the waves at the minute. So the Ukrainians are accusing the Lebanese of training Russian drone operators in Syria. Iranians are obviously supplying Russia with the Shahed drones, and then the operators, once they've been trained in Syria, they then go into the battlefield able to use these tools effectively. I haven't seen anything confirmed about the strikes and this being a reason for them, but I'm sure that there's probably going to be at least some motivation to strike areas where this potential training is being, even if they weren't, this would give them an excuse in their eyes to conduct strikes on an expanding area of targets because of these revelations, if they are in fact true. So essentially what's happening at the minute around the world is a lot of countries are getting their populations ready for war, and they're doing it in a informative way. So they're doing campaigns which basically just inform the public to take their own initiative and prepare. There's countries that are suggesting that they install bunkers in the homes. They're supplying leaflets and information about how to get prepared for potential future conflicts. And then you've got the other side of that where they're being forced and extending conscription and increasing the amount of time that people who get conscripted in the future have to remain in the army. We hear from Russia that they're carrying out drills throughout the nation, and they're going to start lessons, effectively just telling the country how to get prepared and instilling that in the minds of youngsters. The higher education system in Russia is becoming increasingly militarized. Intelligence has analyzed the creation of new military institutes in Russia. It only makes sense, when you're being threatened, that you prepare the nation, because sooner or later, conflict's going to come to your door. And right now, the wolves are right at Russia's door. So we were talking about in the previous video about basically the Ukraine has accused Russia of using Starlink. It might be the Ukraine is just trying to stir up a bit of trouble. It doesn't really make sense that they would cheese off Elon when he could just pull the plug on it, but if reports are to be believed, then Elon's basically handed over essentially that portion of Starlink to the United States Army anyways. So, but yeah, the Kremlin and Musk have had to come out and they're completely denying that this is actually the case. Russia itself is basically saying it can't be officially supplied here, and it's not officially being supplied. And even if it was in Russia, the devices, they wouldn't be able to work. You got one side who's denying that it's able to be even connected, and then Ukraine is basically saying that Starlink's freely available in Russia. So, I mean, who knows what's going on, but it seems like a lot of claims on first sight, it would seem quite petty. I don't know. I think there's probably a bit more to this because it seems to be a big bit of contention on the Ukrainian side. They're adamant that they're using this system, and the other side's basically saying they're not. And the guy who owns it is saying that they don't have access. That's the end of today's Prepper News. Thanks very much for watching. Be safe, be prepared, and I'll see you in the next broadcast. This has been Geordie Prepper, signing out.